Hello. So we're here in the car because today I want to talk a little bit about how driving relates to the LSAT. Think back to when you were in driver's ed class, if you took a driver's ed class. If you didn't, you weren't missing much. So there's no point in the average driver's ed class where the driver's ed teacher, sits you down and says, okay, here is every single picture of every single type of road in the entire United States. Here's every single type of highway interchange. Here's every single type of stoplight configuration. Here's every single combination possible of like stop signs, yield signs, whatever. They don't bother to do that, and you don't sit down and memorize those things because that would be a stupid way to get ready to learn how to drive. Right? When you're driving, you pretty much just need to know a few basic concepts, and then you need to know some rules of the road, and you need to know how those two things like interact together. But you don't need to memorize like every single possibility for. Right now, for instance, I'm at a four-way stop. Right? I don't have to know what every single four-way stop on Earth looks like. I don't even really have to know how a four-way stop is different from a three-way stop or even a two-way stop or just a stop sign. If you know the general principle that okay, when you come to a stop sign, you stop and then you go in the order of the people who arrived at the different signs. A four-way stop, a five-way stop, a 23-way stop theoretically are all the same thing, right? You don't need like to know special skills for each individual manifestation of all the different stops. Well, it should be the same with the LSAT, but unfortunately in most places it isn't. Typically, if you go learn to take the LSAT from most places, what you're going to end up doing is memorizing every single type of LSAT question configuration that there is. You're going to learn 800 different types of logic games, and you're going to learn 20 types of this or that, or these types of reading passages. The paired passages are harder than the regular passages, or they're different from the regular, blah, 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 blah. And the thing is, they're really not. So just like you learn to drive by learning, okay, the accelerator is on one side, the brake is on the other side, the blinkers are here, this and that and whatever. You should learn to take the LSAT in the same way by learning a few simple principles and then seeing how those principles apply in every single possible LSAT configuration. And this is, you can do this, it's possible for a very important reason. And most people who teach the LSAT totally overlook this reason, which is why they do it the way they do and end up wasting your time and money. The reason that you can do the LSAT this way is actually very similar to the reason that you can kind of learn to drive without actually learning what every single road looks like in America. The road situation is pretty standardized. Roads generally have a few lanes going in each direction. They have all the same signs, in different places. They have speed limits. You have to find out what the speed limit is. A road is a road is a road for the most part. And so because of that, you don't need to learn what every single one of them looks like. You just kind of learn to look for a few basic things, and you see those things, and that's that. Well, the LSAT is also standardized. In fact, it's standardized way more than the road system is standardized. And so if you learn the LSAT's standards, instead of like every single type of game or every single type of question of a particular thing or whatever, if you just learn the standards, then you can apply those standards over and over and over again on the same questions, because the questions are all the same, just like the roads are all the same. So anyway, I'd like you to think about that, and we're going to head back now to the office, which is also my house, to the home office, and I'm going to explain to you a little bit more about how this whole thing works with driving and the LSAT and standardization and all of that good stuff. So thanks very much for watching this. I'm going to stop driving around in circles now, and I'll see you on the inside in just a second.
Hi, so here we are in the home office, and I'd like to give you an example of one of those LSAT techniques that can be used and applied widely across a whole variety of situations, question types, whatever. The type of thing we were just talking about, so that you can study a few simple concepts that have wide application, and in that way avoid having to study a gazillion different approaches for a gazillion different types of classifications of whatever it is that they're teaching out there in overpriced LSAT land. So what we have here is a game from the LSAT Preparation 2008 web.pdf document. If you haven't downloaded that, you should do it. It's free. You can get it off the LSAC website. And what I've got loaded up on the screen for you right now is question 1 of the logic games section from that document. Now, this document is, I mean, it's useful in some respects because it is free LSAT questions, which is always good, you know, to practice with. It has, however, some explanations. It's got an explanation for each question, and you can see, for instance, the explanation for this question runs about a half a page, 3/4 of a page-ish, and it's a bad explanation. That's the main reason we don't like it, right? So as always with any sort of LSAT preparation material, even if it comes from the LSAC, make sure that you take any kind of explanatory notes or annotations or explanations or anything like this. Take that all with a grain of salt, because the LSAC is really not very good at explaining how you should take the LSAT, which kind of makes sense, because if they understood how easy the LSAT actually is, they would probably change it. So anyway, or not change it now because they can't, but they would have designed it differently, you know, in the very beginning. So at any rate, what I'm going to show you here is how one very, very basic concept can be applied broadly to a whole bunch of different question types. This question 1 right here is an example of a type of logic game that probably does not fit neatly into any sort of category that you may already be familiar with, if you are familiar with those types of organizational schema classification systems, whatever you want to call them. This game, as you can tell from these not entirely helpful diagrams over here, this game is an example of something you might call like a spatial game, if that exists. I don't know what the classification systems are for all these things. I kind of only read enough of them to figure out that they didn't work, and then promptly forgot most of the details. So if there is like a spatial type of game, spatial, S-P-A-T-I-A-L, not S-P-E-C-I-A-L, if there is a spatial type of game, then I guess this would be it. The classification systems that I'm vaguely familiar with didn't have spatial games when I learned them anyway. So, you know, whatever. So this is a really good example, potentially, of the type of game that a classically trained LSAT person might look at and go, oh my god, I have no idea how to do this. It's not one of my 18 logic game types that I learned in my weekend retreat or whatever it is that you guys are doing. So, yeah, so I think it's a good place to start because, like I say, this counting thing, the thing I'm about to teach you right now, is broadly applicable, and certainly no less applicable even in games where the game seems to be a little bit bizarre or odd or unprecedented or whatever you want to call it. So the technique is, that I'm going to show you right now, the technique is counting, which is pretty easy to do, right? And hopefully most of us can do that. We always want to be counting all kinds of things on any standardized test, especially multiple choice standardized tests, because it's important to remember that the questions are designed according to certain patterns, certain rules, certain standards, whatever. And when the questions are designed, the wrong answer choices are deliberately designed to, well, to do a variety of things. We really can't get into all of them here, but